Hi, everybody. My name is Haley. I'm here from ProWritingAid, and welcome to another session in the ProWritingAid series for writers. This, I think, might be our lucky number 75, our 75th session since we started last March. And initially, we were just going to try to keep people busy for a few short weeks of lockdown. And now Sue and I were just talking about how we've been in this for a year. Sue, we have books being done, we have whole other projects launched, but we've been here for a year, and we're just so thrilled to be here. And I'm so thrilled to be here with Sue because you guys are going to just learn so much. So Sue Campbell is a book marketing coach at Pages and Platforms, and Sue works with both traditionally published and self-published authors, including bestsellers and award winners, to help them build an engaged audience, spread their message, and sell more books. Sue has been generous enough to offer us a link to a free writer mindset mini course, which I'm going to drop in the chat. And then beyond that, Sue, I'm just going to turn it over to you to talk about author websites.
All right, fantastic. Thanks, Haley, and thanks everyone for being here and getting on yet another Zoom call in your life. I am just going to share a presentation with you. I want to talk about author websites, do's and don'ts. With the authors that I work with, I find there are a lot of misconceptions. There's a lot of confusion. There's a lot of time that's spent on author websites, and I can just save you a lot of time and effort and make sure that your efforts aren't going to waste. So I want to cover that today. Haley gave me a nice intro, so I can skip that part. Again, go ahead and put your questions in the Q&A box, and we'll get to those at the end. My link one more time for that writer mindset course, and I'll talk about why you might need that a little later on, is tinyurl.com/writer mindset. But let's talk about what we're going to learn today. The first thing we're going to talk about is a better definition of marketing, right? A lot of us have a lot of baggage around the word marketing, and we want not much to do with it, nothing to do with it if we can possibly help it. So we'll look at a different way of thinking about it, and I'll tell you a little bit about my approach. We're going to talk about what your author website is actually for, right? It sounds like a silly question, but do you actually know what an author website is for? What's its job? And then we will get into a list of do's and don'ts, and I'll walk you through things that will give you a much clearer idea of what your website needs to do and how you should do it. So let's go ahead and dive in. First, let's talk about that definition of marketing. So when I talk to a lot of writers about their marketing, they're very hesitant. Marketing feels yucky. It's something they're not comfortable with. They're not comfortable selling themselves. And I totally understand that. A lot of us were raised with a set of values where we don't put ourselves forward in that way. We don't want to be the used car salesperson who sold us our first car. We don't want to be the spam phone caller, right? We don't want to be hawking breakfast cereal. We don't want to have that reputation of the worst examples that we've seen of marketing. So what I try to encourage people, it's like, I wish I didn't even have to use the word marketing. I wish I didn't have to call it marketing. I haven't found a better word that people, immediately grasp what the heck I'm talking about. So I'm still using that word, but I talk about marketing as the act of building long-lasting connections with readers, right? It's just building long-lasting connections with readers. It's part of the writer life and being a writer that we want to be connected to the people who are consuming our books, consuming our stories. And we want to be relentlessly helpful to them. We want to make sure that we are providing value. When we're providing value, marketing is a service, right? It's not something to shy away from. The other thing that's really important if you're talking about, clean marketing and clean selling is that you're targeting the right set of people, the people who would actually value from your book. I see some authors where they're just constantly pushing their books in places and in ways that maybe aren't appropriate for their ideal audience. If you're focused on your ideal audience and you're providing value to that audience, there's no problem, right? You're providing a service. If every writer tomorrow stopped writing, if we all went on strike, any kind of writing that is happening in the world, everybody went on strike, the world would feel the effects and the impact immediately, right? Suffering would ensue. We need writers, we need stories, and we need writers to be willing to put that value out into the world through their marketing. So I am going to give you sort of the nickel tour of the marketing system that I use so that you'll understand the website recommendations that I'm making. So what I use is a framework called the connection system. And it was developed by my mentor, who has had multiple clients on the bestseller list. At one point, he had 5 clients on the bestseller list all at the same time. His name's Tim Grawl. He worked with people like Chip and Dan Heath, Daniel Pink, some really heavy hitters in the nonfiction space. So he's also a very systems-oriented guy. So he put together this repeatable framework that all writers can use, but yet is also very customizable for your ideal reader, your genre, your audience. So it has 4 pieces. The first piece is permission. So maybe you've heard of permission marketing before, right? This is the non-sleazy kind of marketing where you are someone's inviting you in, right? So one form of permission is social media. If I am following someone on Instagram, I'm essentially giving them permission to show up in my feed, in my Instagram feed. However, social media is not a great place to sell books. It just doesn't work very well for actually moving the needle on sales. So the kind of permission that we want to focus on as authors is building an email list, right? If we want to be an author, write more than one book, make a career for ourselves, we need to be able to reach those people, have that long-lasting relationship that's built over time. And the best way to do that is through email. Right? I'm going to consume an email in a much different way than I'm going to consume a tweet that's scrolling by at 1,000,000 miles an hour, along with all of this other fire hose of, social media posts that are coming. So when I talk about permission, I'm talking about building an email list. It is so, so valuable to do. I can't emphasize that enough. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. The next piece of the system is content. So remember, back before the pandemic, we used to be able to go to the grocery store and get a grocery store sample, right? You could try the blue corn tortilla chip before you bought a bag, before you put it in your cart. Content is like that. You want to put as much free content into the world that's going to appeal to your ideal reader as you can. And then they get to determine if that's a good fit for them. They get to determine if they want to hear more from you. So content is the second piece. The third piece is outreach, okay? When I talk to writers, this is the piece that everyone is missing, that almost everyone is missing, is outreach. So outreach is moving people from not knowing you exist to now knowing you exist by going out, finding an audience that's already full of your ideal readers, and then you're getting in front of that audience, right? So it means connecting with other influencers, and it means getting out into the world virtually or physically to meet the people who need to know about you and would love your book. That's what I'm doing today as a form of outreach. ProWritingAid audience didn't know I exist. Now you know I exist. And now I'm offering you content. And then I've invited you back to my email list with permission, with the little writer mindset mini course. And then the fourth piece of the system is selling. And that simply means making an offer of value to someone who would benefit from it, right? We don't have to feel icky about the word selling as long as we're not trying to sell something totally inappropriate to the wrong person. Selling your book is, even writing a book, is an act of moral good, right? It is putting value into the world. So we should not feel ashamed about offering that book then for sale. Or maybe you're in the nonfiction space and you not only have a book, you have a course to go along with it, right? And somebody is better off with you than without you, with your book than without your book. So those are the 4 pieces. Permission is your email list. Content is anything you're putting out into the world for free so people can get a handle on what you do. Outreach is getting out there where your ideal reader already is, moving people from not knowing you exist to now knowing you exist. And then selling is offering them your book or books. So that is the connection system. Let's talk about what your author website then is really for. Given that system that we just talked about, the number one job of your website, number one job, is to get people on your mailing list. It's not necessarily even to get them to buy your book. If it does that too, fantastic. But I don't want someone to just buy my book or buy my client's book. I'm an author as well. I don't want them to buy my book and then I never see them again and they never know when the next book comes out. So by getting them on my mailing list, I have the opportunity to sell them this book and the next book and the next book and the next book. So really, really crucial job. And your website is a really big tool so that you can do that. So then let's talk about do's and don'ts specifically for your author website. So the first do, this is really important because we want to present ourselves as professionally as possible. You're going to use your own URL. You're not going to have it hosted, suewriter.wordpress.com. You're not going to have it with, any company's name wedged in there just so that you can get the URL for free. Right? We're going to pony up the $15 or whatever it is and get your own URL. I always recommend that you're using your author name or some variant. If you have a common name, you might have to have, mine is Sue Campbell Books, right? Because I have a fairly common name. So Sue Campbell alone wasn't available, but use your name, not your book name. And the reason for that is you don't want to have to build a new website every time you have a new book. Right? You're going to feature yourself as an author and your books are available as a listing within that website. You don't need to set up a new website for every book that you release. If you want to go ahead and buy the URL for your book title, that's fine. Just redirect it to your main author website. Second do, I want you to use a really high quality or premium theme or template. Now, there are free themes and templates that work well, but usually I encourage people just to spend a little bit of money. It's usually $100, $200 if you're on WordPress to get a high quality premium template. It's going to be more secure, so you're not as likely to get hacked. And it's just going to look a lot more professional than a lot of the free templates out there. So I recommend, again, just spending a little more money, not a ton of money, and getting that free high quality template. If you're on something like Wix or Squarespace, that's already included in what you're paying for. They're all high quality and look great. So just pick something as modern looking as possible. Another thing that I want you to really consider carefully and do your homework on is I want you to use copy, right? The text on your website and your imagery that's appropriate for your particular genre. And how do you know? Well, you go to the websites of other writers in your genre and you get a feel for what they look like, what they sound like. Yes, I want you to be yourself and stand out and make yourself a little bit different, but you can't be so different that a science fiction person comes and looks at your site and can't tell what's going on, can't tell what kind of book you write, right? You need to send those signals that you're a science fiction writer, or you need to send those signals that you're a romance writer, or those signals that you're a fantasy writer. And the only way you're going to be able to do that successfully is by going to look at the imagery and the copy of other successful authors in your same genre. Next one. Now, because your website's job, number one job, is to get you email subscribers, you need to have a sign-up form for them to join your email list in multiple places on your site. So the ones that I really like to see are up in the menu bar, and then above the fold, which is an old, newspaper term, but still works in the digital age. So you don't have to scroll down. I shouldn't have to scroll down. It should be somewhere on your homepage before I scroll so that I get that opt-in offer to join your mailing list. And we'll talk about a little bit more about that in a minute. Also, I'd like to see it in the footer. And I would also like you to have a pop-up. Now, I know a lot of us have feelings about pop-ups. I personally, even though I'm a marketer and I know they work, don't like the big splash across the entire page and, prevent you from doing anything else. I really like the ones that hang out down in this lower corner and pop up and hover there. Still very effective at converting people into subscribers, but not completely obnoxious and, getting people mad because they can't literally do anything else before they deal with that box. Now, really important in order to get those casual visitors to your site turned into subscribers, is we need to offer them something of value. This is that content again that we're offering so people can determine if we're a good fit. So a reader magnet or a sign-up incentive or a freebie, it has lots and lots of names, but basically it's anything of value that you can offer to someone who is your ideal reader. It has to be tied to your work, right? Let's say you do more than one thing. Let's say you're a poet and you also write science fiction novels. Well, unless you're writing science fiction poetry, you don't want to give away your poetry in order to get people on your list to buy your science fiction novels, right? Great reader magnets are short pieces of fiction that are just much in the same vein as your longer works. It can be even something appropriate for your genre, right? If you write in a very specific niche, you could put together, an epic list of the books that are most influential in that niche. Readers are always looking for things to read. Readers are hungry for great content. If you help them find that, they're very thankful and grateful. On the nonfiction side, your limits are just absolutely endless. And when you sign up to my mailing list, you'll get a big list of sign-up incentives as well, so you can get some ideas for yourself. But really crucial, that should be on the top of your to-do list. If you have a website already, but you don't have an email list, or you don't have something that you're offering for free in exchange to sign up for your email list, put that at the top of your priority list to create. I want you to have a really good headshot, right? And however you look is how you look, and that's fine and wonderful. Don't be self-conscious about it, right? People love people who are just confident, but I don't want to see, a low quality headshot. And I'll talk about that in the don'ts of some I've seen. And it doesn't need to be a professional headshot. If it is, great. But if not, you find one of your friends or family members and you stay socially distanced who has the newest iPhone in portrait mode, right? And you get some really good lighting, and just make sure that you have a really nice looking high quality headshot. You also want to have a professional bio that's targeted to your ideal reader, right? I have a long history. I've had a lot of stuff happen in my life. It doesn't all need to go in my bio. I want to craft my bio so that the people, and when I write novels for middle grade readers, right? So what does a middle grade reader or the parent of a middle grade reader want to know about me to know that I'm someone who can offer them a satisfying reading experience? They don't need to know I was a business systems analyst and I worked at Subway when I was a teenager, right? We need a targeted bio. Again, you can get great ideas for what to include in a great bio by reading a ton of them yourself. And you can kind of see what works and what doesn't when you start going through there. Definitely have descriptions and images of your books with links to buy, right? I highly recommend having 3D images of your books. There are a number of tools online you can just Google that will convert it into a 3D image of a book for you. There's something about that on a subconscious level that is just more satisfying, where I'm like, oh, I know that's a book. I don't have to figure out if that's an album or it's just a graphic on a website. That's a book. So you want to help them with that. You want to have a really high quality description of your book, right? Spend a lot of time working on that matter. If you're self-published or independently published, you want that to, nobody should be able to tell the difference between something a publishing house put out in terms of a blurb and description and what you put out. Have a contact form. So a contact form is not the same as an email list sign up, right? A contact form is so this will get pushed directly to your normal email address. And it's so that someone can say, hey, will you come and speak to my book club? Or, hey, will you come and speak to my conference? Or, hey, this book really touched me. It was amazing. It made me cry. Someone just to send you, a message, a one-off message. That's what a contact form is for. It's different than your email sign up, but you should still have it if you want to be reached. You definitely want to, and I say this with a little caveat, you don't want to get super hung up on it and spend a ton of time on it, but you do want to think about the keywords for your specific genre and search engine optimization, right? Making sure Google can crawl your site and know what you're about and serve you up to the right people when they're doing a search. You want to fill out those SEO fields when you're creating a page or creating a blog post. just so that you are as findable as possible. We're doing all of this work to create great content. We don't want it to get lost. So just take the time to fill out those SEO fields. You don't need to spend a ton of time thinking it. You don't need to pay somebody else to figure it out for you. Just use the fields that are available to you as a default. I want you to have a media kit. So a media kit is basically, you can do it in a Google Doc, you can do it in a PDF, you can do it on a web page, but it is one central place where you can create a packet of information so that when you go do outreach, you can say, here's my media kit. It's got headshots of me. It's got pictures of my book. It's got descriptions of my book. It has possible questions you could ask me if you were to interview me, right? It's just one quick link that you can give to people that will save you both so much back and forth once you start doing your outreach. It's a very big time saver. You do want to link to your social profiles. Why not, right? I don't want you to spend a ton of time worrying about building up huge social media followings. But if it happens organically, just because you're putting it out there, that's great. I want you to spend that energy instead on growing your email list rather than worrying about social. But you still want to have links if you do have those social profiles. I want you to set reminders to update your dated content, right? So if you've got an event coming up in June and you're going to list it on your website, I want you, when you put it on your website, to go into your calendar, and the day after that event, remind yourself to go take that information down or say this event has passed, right? I've seen author websites where you go up and it's like, book coming soon, and it was 2017 that it was released, right? We want to stay on top of it and make sure that any new visitor to the website knows that we're still here, we're still active, and we're keeping all of this information up to date. This one is optional. You could have a blog. You don't have to have a blog, right? There's probably a huge sigh of relief going out right now. You do not have to have a blog. However, if you're going to have a newsletter anyway, which you are, right? Because you're creating an email list, you may as well use the same content from your newsletter and push it out to your blog as well. It's just more content. It's more grocery store samples for people to see and enjoy, to help them feel like you're a good fit for them so that they will actually join your email list. But you don't absolutely strictly have to have one. Okay, so now we are moving into the don'ts. These are just some cautionary things that I have seen people from my clients, sorry, I have to reach for a tissue, that, you know, just send the wrong signals or are not effective. So let's talk about them here. The first one is, don't use a template or a theme that looks really dated. If you've had your theme for 5 years, it's time to redo your website. It's time to get a new theme. Or if you just have one that for whatever reason really went out of fashion and looks dated compared to other people, it's time to update that. When you ask people to sign up for your newsletter, I don't want you to just say, sign up for news and updates. I'm very sorry to break this to all of us, but nobody cares about our news and updates unless they are our best friends or in our immediate family. They're not going to give over their email address and fill up their inbox for news and updates, right? I want you to advertise that reader magnet, that freebie that you're giving away. Everything you do should be so reader focused and providing value to them. And there's no value for them in news and updates unless you're already super famous and have people just hanging on your absolute every word and movement. So don't say sign up for news and updates. Say sign up to get my free science fiction short story, or sign up to get my, and you know, really sell it. Use a little one tagline for whatever it is that you're giving away. Play with a lot of messages for that. Pick the best one and use that. Don't use a headshot that is a selfie, right, where we can see your shoulder up by your ear, or that is cropped out of a group photo from like the company picnic or something, right? Get the time to get that professional looking headshot. Here's one that I see a surprisingly often amount of time. It's the confusion between sounding professional and being interesting, right? So a lot of these sites, the writers will sound like a robot, right? There's no emotion, there's no oomph, there's no pizzazz in what they're saying. So unless you actually write about robots, right, and you want to make it a fun thing where your website sounds like a robot said it, don't sound like a robot, Make sure that you have a distinct, authentic voice on your website so that you can attract the right kind of reader. Don't blog just for the sake of blogging because someone told you you should blog every day or every week or whatever it is, and just put subpar content out there. Not worth it, right? Not worth it. You want every piece of content that you put up to be valuable for your ideal reader. So don't feel like you have to blog just for the sake of it. Make sure you're creating something worth consuming. You don't have to spend a ton of money to create a site. If you have any tech skills at all, there are so many great sites now that are much easier interfaces than used to be common, 10 years ago. Squarespace, Wix, platforms like that are fairly straightforward to use. And even if you get, 90% of the way there yourself and you need help on that last 10%, that is far more, cost efficient than paying someone, upwards of $10,000 or more to create your author website. Most of us do not need that level of website, especially with what's available today, sort of off the shelf. Here's a big one. A lot of writers, when they're going and doing their marketing, there's this big bucket of tasks that are associated with marketing. Some of them are comfortable. Some of them will make us uncomfortable. And many writers would rather spend endless hours trying to get our website just perfect because it's more comfortable. It's safer. We're still behind here. We're not going to tell anyone about our website till it's perfect. And so we'll spend hours and hours and hours on our website when we could be doing those outreach marketing activities that are going to bring you a much higher return on your time investment and your money investment than working on your website and getting it absolutely perfect. Doesn't need to be perfect. Number one job is it needs to convert people from visitors to subscribers. That's it. So let's recap a little bit what we've learned so far. So we talked about a better definition of marketing. We are not trying to sell anyone a used car. We are writers. What we do is valuable. It's of service to the world. And we don't have to be shy about that. Our goal is to create connections with people that will last over the long haul. It's not just about this book. It's about all the future books. And I don't know about you, but I've gotten some, quote unquote fan mail. I'm not inundated with it by any means, but someone taking the time to tell you how your book made a difference in their lives is what the connection system is all about, right? We don't need many of those to sort of keep us going and make this feel like that is all worthwhile. That's why it's called the connection system, because we want to feel connected to our audience. We want to feel like what we're doing is making a difference. We talked about what your author website is really for. It is to get people onto your email list. Your email list is your number one marketing tool. It should be your number one goal, is growing your list. And then we talked about all the do's and don'ts for your author website, which basically boil down to make sure that you're presenting yourself professionally and appropriately for your genre, and that you are very reader focused. You're delivering value to that ideal reader who would love your book. So one thing I want to let you know as well, and this goes back to my message, like don't spend hours and hours and thousands of dollars, is your website is actually only a small piece of your marketing strategy. If you go to that, connection system framework of permission, outreach, content, and selling, your website is content and it's helping permission. It's gaining you permission. Those are the two things it's doing. There are so many more activities that you need to do as part of your marketing strategy. And the biggest obstacle to doing these things is your own mindset, right? The feelings that you have about marketing, the feelings that you have about putting yourself out there and asking an influencer if you can come on their podcast, or if you can write a guest post, or if you can speak at their conference, your head will get in the way, right? Your own brain is your own worst enemy when it comes to successfully marketing your book. So that is why I am pointing you to that writer mindset free mini course that will help you reach not just your marketing goals, but also your writing goals. Because we just have a ton of mind trash to deal with as writers. There are so many decisions to be made. There are so many ways that we can feel vulnerable. We have got to get our head on straight when it comes to these things, or we're not going to be able to have a sustainable career because we'll give up. As you know, most writers tend to give up. So that is my spiel. I'm so happy to answer questions.
Awesome. Yeah, we have a ton. Okay,
Right.
so let's just start from the beginning. Someone says, how much personal information should be on my website? Should people be able to reach me directly via, say, email? I feel like it opens up to stalkers risks.
Okay, so it depends on your personal comfort level. I wouldn't send them, like, just give them your email address, right? Like, you know, whatever your first name is at your Gmail account, you don't give them that. You can certainly provide a contact form that provides a little bit of that buffer that can make you feel more comfortable. You have to ask yourself, what are your goals? Do you want people to be able to reach you so they can book you for things? If you don't have a way for them to do that, you're not going to get those kinds of opportunities. I also think, you know, we have this, we don't want to be unknown and we don't want to be stalked, right? And both of those things are really important to keep in mind. The likelihood of being stalked is fairly small, and certainly you want to set that up for yourself so you're within your own comfort parameters. I can't tell you what's going to be right for that, but don't do things like give out your personal, you know, email address. Don't do things like give out your personal physical address. Keep yourself with those common sense safety precautions, and then just dip your toe in and find your own personal comfort level.
Awesome. Okay, so someone else says, how much time should you spend marketing? I feel like it can suck up a lot of time.
This is a perfect mindset question, right? Because a lot of us say we're not going to do our marketing because, oh my God, it must be this huge time suck. Your marketing can take however much time you want your marketing to take. Even if all you did was 2 little marketing activities every week, which maybe one of them takes 15 minutes, maybe one of them takes an hour. It varies, you know, the level of effort for certain tasks. But if you're only doing 2 little things a week, that adds up over the course of an entire year to actually making an impact and making a difference in your marketing. So don't spin yourself a story that getting to do your marketing is going to be another full-time job. You get to decide. But if you have a strategy, right? Let's say you spend 2 hours making yourself a very clear strategy. It becomes less time consuming to execute because you don't have to figure things out every single time you sit down to market, right? You're working from one plan, you're checking things off, and you're systematically doing things that you know will make a difference. And that does not actually take a lot of time.
Awesome. I know you touched on this a little bit, but what kinds of images, video, audio should be on the website? Should that all be professionally done? I feel like people don't want to read a lot of text online.
So it depends on your ideal audience to some extent, right? So people who, you know, if you're a long form essayist, your audience is used to reading a lot of text. They enjoy a lot of text. You can get away with a lot more text. If you are writing, you know, very, very short stories or flash fiction, right, your audience has a less tolerance for that. So that answer is different depending on your specific genre. And the question about does it all need to be professionally produced? No, right? Like if it's important to you, again, somewhat depends on your ideal reader. If they have very, very high standards because they're all business professionals and all of their stuff is professionally done, then yeah, you probably do. If you're an indie author who's, you know, on a quick publish cycle, people understand that you're not doing all of that necessarily to that level. So it depends on your audience. It depends on your personal standards, but there are so many tools nowadays that can make things look really, really professional if you have a little bit of know-how and spend a little bit of time to learn how to use them. So that's a tough one to answer definitively. You're gonna have to feel it out.
Awesome. A couple of people asked about on the same question, well, a slightly different question on imagery and stuff, like should you use stock images? Should you try to take unique photos for everything? Yeah, that type of thing.
Again, depends a little bit on your particular genre. Stock images can be great, but people also really like to see authentic images of you, right? Like Haley could take a picture of her cute dog in the background, right? They want to see a little bit of a slice of life type of thing, typically. So you want to come off as a real person. You don't want it all to be, stock imagery of people around conference tables and horrible stock imagery. So if you're going to go the stock route, use it carefully and selectively, but it does have a place. And I would say it can be a mixture, right? Some of it's going to be from your life. Some of it's going to be from stock. Some of it's going to be from, your Instagram feed if you're good at photography. And it also depends, is something in your zone of genius or not? If you're not good at making images, have someone do it for you or get stock images if you're not good at taking pictures. The important part is that it is relevant to your genre and fits, it's of a piece with what authors are doing in your space.
Awesome. A couple of people have asked, again, a little bit more specifically about, if they're writing in multiple genres, if they're writing in fiction and nonfiction, if just they have a bunch of different kind of writing. So if you can just speak a little bit more to that.
Yes. So I love this question. I get this a lot, right? Because we're writers, we're creative people. We're not always going to stay in one lane, and that's okay. There are two ways that you can approach that. One is you can look through your work and say, is there a thematic tie through all of my work? Maybe I'm not even super conscious of it right now, but if I really unpack it, like I always write very strong female characters, right? Or I always write about social justice, whether it's fiction, nonfiction, this genre in fiction, that genre in fiction. If you can find a thematic tie to your work, then you can have one website and you're just letting people experience you and that theme in different ways through different things that you're writing. So that's one approach. I really like that approach if you've got that strong thematic tie, because it's simpler on you, the maintenance is simpler, and you don't have to build a bunch of different platforms. If your platforms are wildly different and that's not anywhere close to the same ideal reader or ideal audience, you are probably best served by creating two different websites. Right? So for example, if you're writing erotica over here and you're writing kids stories over here, you need two different sites, right? That should be very clear. But you can kind of gauge if things are very, very different. It's going to be hard. You don't want someone to land on your site and be confused, right? Because confusion is like, whatever, I'm clicking away. I got a ton of other options. But if you can be clear on your theme, you can keep it to one site. If you can't be clear, you can create two different sites. And for some people, there's enough difference. Like Annie Barrows is an author who writes a lot for children, but she also writes for adults. So her site says Annie Barrows at the top, and it's got a little signpost for kids, go here, for adults, go here. And you click on it, and it basically takes you to two different places within her site, but it feels very customized to that. So I've seen a lot of writers do that well. If you have two things going on, you can just put a splash screen on your homepage where people can pick what is relevant to them, and then they're off to that customized content.
Awesome. That's really helpful. Some people asked about when you should have a website. So should I have a website before my book is published? If yes, what kind of content should I have if I don't have a book to sell yet?
Okay. I love this question too, because everybody wants to wait until the last possible minute to do their marketing. So there are a couple of drawbacks to that. If you wait and don't have a website up until your book is coming out, then you don't have anyone waiting for that book, right? You don't have any chance to build up buzz ahead of time. Now that can work, but it's going to be a much slower slog for you to launch that book and find it readers. I like to say that you can start your marketing as soon as you know what kind of story you're going to tell. As soon as you know the right ideal reader for that book, you can start your marketing, and it will benefit you to start your marketing, right? It's like that old saying of, the best time to start was 3 years ago and the next best time is now, right? You can build up that email list so you have people who are ready and waiting for your book once it publishes, and you have time to experiment with marketing and find your own marketing voice and the approach you want to take. Sometimes it takes a little practice for us to sort of get good at this, and we don't want to blow it right at the book launch, and we have no idea how we're going to message any of this or how we're going to talk about it. So I recommend starting before. Now that said, if you don't have a book out yet, what do you put on your website? Well, you offer that reader magnet. You talk about the book that you are writing, right? Like a coming soon. You can even do a mock-up cover if you don't have a cover yet. And you basically are doing all of the things you would do if your book were completed, but you don't actually have the link to buy the book yet, right? You're asking them instead to join the newsletter, get this freebie, and then you'll be able to tell them when your book is coming out.
Awesome. Okay, so let's see. So someone was saying, a couple of people were saying that they're getting a lot of spam in their contact form. Do you know if there's anything that they can do to stop kind of just getting the like, let me help you? Some of them are
I wish I knew how to prevent getting spam in your contact form. It's par for the course for that contact form. And I just like, as soon as I can quickly identify that it's spam, it just gets deleted and that's the end of it. Thankfully, it's not as prevalent as comments. When you have comments on your blog, just don't turn comments on your website. It's not worth it.
Someone says, should you collaborate or shout out to other authors on your site?
Absolutely. You are not in competition with other authors, right? For the kinds of readers who we want, which are people who are like, they read multiple books per year. Think of the other authors in your genre, all as potential collaborators. It should be an all boats rise kind of approach. You don't have to be like, oh, if I promote this person's book, nobody's going to buy my book because they'll have already read that book, right? You know, as a reader, you're hungry for the type of content that you love the most, and your readers are the same way. So I absolutely love when people give shout outs to other authors. Can you bundle your books and do group giveaways? You know, how do you set each other up so that everybody succeeds? Great question.
Love that. Okay, let's see. Some people have asked about collecting email stuff with like data protection laws. Like, does that count as collecting personal data? Do you have to register for that? I think it will definitely be dependent on the country that you're in. So
Yeah, but you want to make sure, like, look at the country you're in, figure out what laws are going to apply to you. And usually, you know, don't read the actual law because you will go cross-eyed unless you are a lawyer and you can figure it out. Fantastic. But almost all email service providers have guidance in their help menu to make sure that you are complying with the laws. So if you have a question, the first place to look is MailChimp or MailerLite or whatever service you're using for your email list. In a nutshell, you want to be very clear, like you're giving them a reader magnet, but you also need to tell them that they're getting your newsletter as well, that they can unsubscribe at any time, right? You just want to follow all those little check boxes, and it's fairly straightforward. Don't let it scare you, right? That's another area where I see a lot of writers not doing their marketing and not setting up an email list because they're frightened of that. There are ways to figure all of that out, and it's not as complicated as you think.
Awesome. Okay. Somebody says, can you give some more examples of what an unpublished author can offer for free? A list of the 10 best titles or something like that. If I haven't been in the industry, feels a little scary.
Okay. So, any work that you have that you liked, like a darling from your current work that you know is going to be cut or that you've already cut, you can give that away. You can write a prequel to a story. You can write a short story. And the example I gave, like, think of all the books that made a huge impact on you, that were most influential on you. And basically what I'm proposing is you write a little review for that book and you put a little thumbnail of the book cover in a PDF and you have people download that, right? And a write-up about why these books are important or why they would want to read them. That's actually really simple to do. And people like getting that sort of insider information. And is this fiction specifically? Could we tell from the question, Haley?
I'm not sure if we could tell from the question.
Okay, so fiction writers, you know, the closer you can get to something that you have written that will give them a sense of your writing style, the better usually. On the nonfiction side, you have a ton of options based on whatever it is that you're writing about. You can give checklists, you can give small email courses, you can give worksheets, you can give templates, white papers, you know, there's just an absolute ton of options. And again, one of the things that you can do is think about, well, what would be how do I put myself in the shoes of the ideal reader? What do they need? What problem can I solve for them, right? And on the fiction side, that problem is I want to be entertained, right? I need something to take me away from the pandemic and into a different realm for a while. And in the nonfiction side, it's often a very specific problem that you can help solve. So your reader magnet should be something that is valuable to solve one of those two problems. And again, if you sign up for my mailing list, I'll give you a big list of sign up incentives, and that's split into fiction and nonfiction.
So somebody asks about updating your website. So like how, I know we talked about in the session about updating, but like how often should you kind of set aside time to do that?
So it depends. If you're blogging, obviously, whenever you're writing a new newsletter, you can put your blog up there. For search engine optimization purposes, if you're refreshing it frequently, that is to your benefit. It's going to help people find it more organically. However, you know, I think concentrating on outreach is even better than concentrating on SEO, right? You know where your ideal audience is and you're going to go out to them rather than wait for them to stumble into your website spider web. But basically, you want to be updating often enough so that you're keeping your content fresh and there's nothing outdated on the site, right? Or if you've got a new book that you're working on and you have news about it, or let's say you went on a podcast, you can update your website with a link out to that podcast, right? You don't have to get on a super strict schedule. Just think, okay, at least once a quarter, what can I go in and update on that website if you're not blogging?
Awesome. Someone asked about original art, especially in fantasy. Is it important to have original artwork and that type of thing?
In fantasy, obviously that is a big part of the experience, is that art and that feeling, right? Fantasy writers love that. So it can be important. It can be wonderful. You don't need to have like a huge ongoing stream of it. If you just carefully select a few images that work really well for your stories and your ideal reader, I think you're fine. If that is your bag and you are also an illustrator and artist, like go ahead and go crazy and make that part of the appeal to someone in your audience that you can provide both of those.
Awesome. Okay, let's see. So someone asked about paid Google. So should you pay Google to put you higher in a search engine? Do you pay it? That type of thing.
I would much rather see you just go out and do outreach, right? Like figure out who your ideal reader is. What podcasts do they listen to? What blogs do they read? Who are the influencers in their space? And go and do that. The return on your time investment is so much more. Paid advertising does have a place in marketing, but it should be, to me, a small slice of your marketing efforts, because the minute you stop paying, you stop seeing that return, right? Whereas outreach, I was on a podcast 2 years ago, I think it was summer of 2018 or 2019. I'm still getting clients from being on that podcast, right? The people have back catalogs, people will find you, whereas Google's going to turn that ad off and no one's ever going to see it again. So the more outreach that you're doing, the more you're sort of building a presence with the people who are most likely to find you, you can honestly do a better job of that than Google Ads.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think it's once you, just like Sue said, once you stop paying for them, they don't do anything else with you. Okay, let's see. So someone asked, it's similar, I think, to the freebie question, but do you have any tips for actually create I think the physical act of creating the content so that it looks professional and that type of thing?
Yes. So a couple of tools that I really like to use. I'm a Mac user, so I'm not exactly sure what the Windows equivalent of some of these would be, but Pages itself, if you're creating a PDF, Pages, which is the word processor for Mac, has some great templates that will give you a nice looking PDF to start with. So you can use that. It's already in your computer. Go, go, go. Another great tool, I'm sure Haley knows this one, is Canva, canva.com. It has an absolute mind-boggling array of templates for all kinds of different things. You can have a mock-up of your book cover. You can have a PDF document. You can set something up that looks like a magazine. You can set up graphics for your social media accounts. Just an astonishing array of choices and possibilities using Canva. So that is probably the one that I point people to the most. It's just a tool that, it was designed for non-graphic designers, right? To be able to still put out something that looks good. So I would start there.
Awesome. So someone also says, if you're making a website, but you are an author who's looking for a pen name and you don't want people to know who you are, do you need to have a headshot on your website?
You don't absolutely need to have a headshot if you are really trying to protect your identity. Consider maybe something sort of mysterious, right? So maybe you can do a headshot where you're in shadow or it's just part of your face. Why not use that as a marketing opportunity, right? And raise some mystery around it. Or you could have someone do like a cartoon of you and maybe change some key features so it's not super obvious who you are. If you're really trying to protect your identity, make it a part of your marketing and explain, somehow creatively and entertainingly that you are keeping your identity a secret.
Awesome. Someone says, should you use a platform like WordPress or Squarespace or something like that to use their templates, or should you pay someone to design it? And I know you kind of talked about this a little bit.
Yeah. And, WordPress, even that designer is going to have a theme. I would not pay someone for most authors, I would not pay a designer to build you a custom theme from scratch. It's insanely expensive. It's really not necessary because there are a lot of themes already built out there that can do the job. And if you have I have a client actually who has a custom WordPress theme, and we are just completely hamstrung with what we can do, right? Because it hasn't been updated forever. That designer's not doing it anymore, right? Like, you want something that is a product that is being maintained and updated. So I recommend going with a theme and WordPress that's already been created, or picking a template in Squarespace and Wix. You can always have a designer go in and add some bells and whistles on something that's already built. And that's going to be much less expensive than having someone come up with it out of whole cloth.
All right. Okay, a couple more. Let's see. Someone asked about getting critique on their website. Do you offer that? Do you know anybody who would help with that?
Well, I would actually come into my Next 9,000 Copies Club for that. I have a monthly membership with marketing, and we can do critiques in that setting. I don't offer it as a standalone product. You could certainly just Google and see if there are other book marketers who offer that service as a standalone. And once in a while, like maybe once a year, I'll do a call for subscribers where I'll do a quick lightning round of website critiques as well.
Awesome. Okay. Someone says, once I have a visually appealing, informative website with email incentives, how do I let the target audience know about it?
Outreach. And Haley, we should do a whole separate webinar on reader personas, like how to write a reader persona, because it's every marketing decision you make comes back to the ideal person to read your book. So all the decisions about how to talk about it on your website, what imagery to use, and where to find your specific influencers. So the most critical thing you can do is decide who is the perfect person to read this book. And it's not this big demographic, like any woman between 34 and 64, right? That's not enough to go on. You want to basically pretend like you're writing a character sketch for a novel. There's specificity and beauty in those details. And then you think, okay, where is Sabrina out in the world? My ideal reader that I've named Sabrina. I know everything about her. Where are all the Sabrinas of the world? What podcasts does she listen to? What conferences does she go to? What are her news sources? What radio stations does she listen to? All of those questions. And then you go out and pitch to those influencers for you to come on in whatever capacity that is, podcast, whatever. And then you're making that offer, right? It works like this with the connection system. You're going out into the world and doing your outreach. During the outreach, you're delivering content. So Sabrina can decide if you're the right writer for her. And then you're inviting her back to your email list. And then you have multiple opportunities to sell to her.
Outreach. Okay. Let's see. Someone says, They said, please do a reader persona webinar. So we can definitely do that. Okay, we've answered a bunch of questions about genre. Someone asked about how do I find the SEO field in WordPress? I'm not sure if you're specifically able to answer that. There's a lot of stuff on WordPress SEO that you can go into.
There's just different plugins. So, in WordPress where you can get a plugin, you can get a specific, there are a lot of different, third-party providers of different SEO plugins. And I think WordPress even has a default couple of fields for that. So when you're creating the page in that back end, if you scroll down to the bottom, you should see something where you can enter SEO data. If you don't, then just go to plugins and look for one.
Great. Okay. We've answered these. If you want to use an image from my or if I want to use an image from my soon to be published book, do I have to pay the illustrator for the right to use the image?
It depends on the illustrator and that particular image. So I would check with the illustrator and be like, what does my license cover? If I'm putting in the book, what does my license cover? Can I use it for promotional materials as well?
Awesome. Okay, I think those are all the questions that we had, aside from the requests for the for the reader persona webinar, which we will definitely get scheduled. Thank you so much, Sue. I'm going to drop Sue's writer mindset mini course in here as well, again, into the chat so that you can see it. Again, sign up. That'll help. Like Sue said, if you sign up, you can get both the course and then you'll also get access to a bunch of different downloads, and it'll just help you stay up to date with Sue and everything she is doing, which is so awesome.
Yes, and my fabulous editing colleagues as well.
Yes, yeah, and if for those of you who know Rochelle and Anne, who have done some of our other websites, our other webinars on fantasy writing, they are absolutely fantastic. They will be presenting at our upcoming Crime Writers Week, and they are just like the best triumvirate. They can help you with everything related to both writing, publishing, and marketing your book. So highly recommend that you stay in touch with them because they are awesome, and we will have them back again at Crime Week, and then Sue, we will get you here to talk about reader persona again soon as well.
Fantastic. It was so fun, everyone. Thanks for your questions. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, everybody. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.